This past weekend, Disney's remake of Mulan finally released on Disney+. So today I'm going to stop and rank all 18 Disney live-action remakes from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I started this channel because I was driving everyone around me crazy talking about movies way too much. If you can relate, you're probably in the right place to consider clicking that subscribe button. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Let me know your ranking of the Disney live-action remakes. Which ones do you love? Which ones do you hate? And which ones are totally meh? Or are you someone that just thinks they're all totally unnecessary? I would love to hear from you. Also, after this video's done, I've done a bunch of rankings of the different Disney eras. You can check those out right up here once this video is done. And let's get started. In last place is Alice Through the Looking Glass, a professionally made total misfire from people who don't appear to be familiar with the works of Lewis Carroll, who just want to turn Alice into an epic blockbuster franchise without ever stopping to consider whether this character fits that template. I mean, the movie kicks off and Alice is the captain of a ship battling pirates. I haven't read Lewis Carroll in a number of years, but immediately something just felt off about that. When we meet the Mad Hatter, he's either depressed or disappointing his father. And this is a character that's supposed to be known for his fun and wackiness, not for how tired and sad he is. The movie consistently replaces bizarre Lewis Carroll ideas with bland blockbuster cliche tropes. The absurdity, the wit, the cleverness of Lewis Carroll's work is replaced with time travel and daddy issues. Ever wonder why the red and white queen don't get along? Ever wonder if the Mad Hatter's dad is proud of him? Ever wonder if there's some event in the past that explains the present of Wonderland? Yeah, me neither. It doesn't make any sense to do that with this source material, but now we have a movie that does all of it. Of all the things that you could do with the writings of Lewis Carroll, why would you do this? Number 17 is 102 Dalmatians, a shockingly lame sequel to the original remake with an unbelievably contrived premise where Cruella de Vil has been psychologically trained to love dogs, only of course this backfires eventually. This is a plot that no adult wants to see and no child could understand, and it's kind of derivative of the plot of A Clockwork Orange. Not the best source material for a kids movie. Beyond that, the creators seem to think that the entire appeal of the original film was just Glenn Close as Cruella de Vil, so they replaced everyone else and they doubled down on Cruella's cruelty, in which case you just get a mean-spirited film that I don't think anyone in particular would enjoy, so it does not work. Next up is Dumbo. Now, I can appreciate that this movie functioned as a remake, a reimagining, as well as a sequel to the original Dumbo. The original film is only about an hour long, and this is nearly 2 hours long. Unfortunately, I didn't particularly enjoy the direction that they took things, the tone, or the vibe in general. There's just a sense of phoniness to the whole thing, from the look to the contrived scenarios to adults constantly making bad choices simply because the script demands it for us to get to the next plot point. And because there's kind of so much meanness and cruelty from different people at different points in time, you never really get the sense of fun in this particular adventure, so it never really takes flight for me. Number 15 is Alice in Wonderland. On paper, Tim Burton seems like a great pick to bring Wonderland to life, but it just seems like something went wrong in the process. Superficially, it looks right, but at its core, it's just wrong. Instead of just trusting the source material, it feels like they took Carroll's works and just squished them through the blockbuster template. The Mad Hatter is cast as Johnny Depp, who was box office gold at the time, but then he was transformed from this fun, wild character into a misunderstood Tim Burton weirdo that he loves to put in his movies. Beyond that, it feels a lot more epic than absurd. Alice goes on a journey, a hero's journey, where she ends up with a magic sword and battles mystical beings while wearing armor. There's some nice creativity in the production design, but overall, the whole thing feels so bland for how weird it is. Coming Coming in at number 14 is Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. This one was pretty frustrating for me because it seemed like they actually had some pretty good ideas for where to take this film. They had all the right ingredients, but something went wrong in the kitchen. The way they cooked it didn't quite work for me. They had all these plot lines about weddings and dueling kingdoms that almost felt a bit like Game of Thrones for kids. And in a movie that's right around 2 hours long, there were just way too many plot lines kind of intersecting for them to develop any of them properly. But most importantly, though, Maleficent feels like a side character in her own film. I mean, Angelina Jolie is great in the role when she's on screen, but she's like a reactionary character that disappears for big chunks of the film and isn't consequential to the main events happening other than kind of these two bookend events at the beginning and end of the film. So overall, a disappointing sequel. Then we have The Sorcerer's Apprentice, a very, very loose remake of one of the segments from Fantasia that has a great director in John Turteltaub, who did the National Treasure films, a fun cast, some very cool visuals, plenty of wizard action sprinkled throughout the entire film, but still manages to kind of just fall flat. And I think almost all of that falls on the script itself, which at no point in time do you really feel the stakes. The characters don't seem like they care about what's happening. There's no sense of urgency until the end of the film. We take our lead character on a bit of this hero's journey, but all of it just kind of feels phony and forced, like they had a first draft where they knew all the right beats that were supposed to happen in a movie like this, but they didn't come up with a clever or satisfying way to get to and through those different plot points. So while it had all of the right pieces to be a really fun wizard adventure, this one just didn't cast a spell on me. Number 12 is The Lion King. This is a film that I thoroughly enjoyed the novelty of seeing it on the big screen in IMAX when it first came out, and then I haven't had any interest in rewatching it ever since. And when I did rewatch it for the sake of this video, it did not age all that well with me. The big hook here is to see the Lion King animated film brought to life with this photorealistic CGI that is truly incredible. But the hook is also the film's biggest liability in that if you create photorealistic lions, they can't emote. And therefore the charm, the fun, the performances are all gone, and you're left with this technically brilliant cover performance of the original film with none of the magic. Beyond that, I think they made a big mistake in casting Beyonce as Nala, as you're supposed to have this romantic scene where they're singing together, and instead you have Beyonce singing all these wild and crazy runs like she's trying to win American Idol, and it becomes a distraction. It doesn't serve the narrative by putting all of these runs in the performance. And that's very much like this film itself, where the technical brilliance of it does not serve the story. Then we have Lady and the Tramp. This is a film I've watched a couple of times with my kids, and it's fine. It's cute enough, telling this story of this family that has a dog and then has a baby, and then the dog kind of being replaced by the baby, and so the dog is trying to find his place in the family and runs into this guy on the street. They go on this adventure, they have a bit of a romance, and then in the end it discovers that he has a heart and is able to save the baby. There's some nice cuteness to all of that. This is just one of these Disney stories, whether you're talking about the original animated film or this one, that's never really done much for me. I don't have any big issues with it to like pick apart. It's just a story that I've never been all that interested in, this canine romance. In 10th place is Beauty and the Beast, a direct adaptation of one of the greatest animated films of all time. And considering the source material, the on-screen and behind-the-scenes talent, it's entirely watchable, and the novelty of seeing it live action is a good bit of fun. And I just have fond memories of taking my daughter to go see it in the theaters. The movie adds like 30 or 40 new minutes into it, and most all of that is additions. There's a couple new songs that are good enough, and then they add kind of a backstory about Belle's family that kind of introduces the Black Plague into the story, which is an interesting choice to say the least. And with so many additions and such a long runtime, it kind of throws the pacing off just a little bit. Now, this is a film that It works well enough. It's enjoyable enough. It doesn't do anything specifically wrong, but if you're in the mood to watch Beauty and the Beast, you're probably just gonna go back and watch the original one. Number 9 is Maleficent. Angelina Jolie is just perfectly cast in this role where she can be good, evil, quirky, charming, intimidating, all of it at the same time. And it's a film that I just appreciate trying to put kind of a different spin on a very familiar story, telling it from a different perspective. There's even some messaging inside of it about how greed and vengeance can kind of rot you from the inside. And we see how one character, they just continue down that path and it destroys them. And we see how the other person breaks out of it and finds kind of a redemptive arc. At the same time, there's also a little bit of a frustration in the concept here as they take one of the most heinous Disney villains of all time and turn them into a misunderstood anti-hero. She was the real victim all along, and in a moment of weakness did something she regretted and spent the rest of her life trying to undo. Sometimes you just want a villain to be a villain, but on its own terms, it's a pretty fun adventure that I enjoy watching. Number 8 is Christopher Robin. Disney gives Winnie the Pooh the Hook treatment, and the results for me were pleasant enough, but a little bit underwhelming at the same time. Now, it absolutely captures the fun, the whimsical wordplay of the original material, and it just takes it, puts it in a real-world setting, and gives it a feature-length runtime. But really, that's the problem, I think, for me. The original Winnie the Pooh segments were basically these 10-minute little short stories, and then it would move on to the next short story, and then they compiled some of those into movies at different points in time, but the runtime of those films was just over an hour in length. This movie is an hour and 49 minutes, and so it just feels like it's stretching out the concept a bit too long. Now, it can be emotional, it can be sentimental, and it can be funny. I just wish that they squeezed it, tightened it up to make a movie that moved a little bit faster. Number 7 is 101 Dalmatians, an unashamedly campy take on the source material that can be cute when we're dealing with the puppies, it can be romantic when you have the couple on screen, and then as you move into the third act, it goes into full-blown slapstick adventure and comedy. Actually, when we got to the third act, my son goes, "This is when it turns into Home Alone with dogs." And that's the fun of this movie, is that it's just trying to entertain. It has a really nice cast. Of course, Glenn Close as Cruella de Vil is the standout that everybody remembers, but you also have Jeff Daniels, Hugh Laurie thrown into the mix, and everyone is just having a lot of fun. It's cheap entertainment, but it is entertaining nonetheless. Number 6, The Jungle Book 1994. The original Disney live-action remake might not have the bells and whistles of the current era of films, but it makes up for it with good old-fashioned adventure and romance. The film was directed by Stephen Sommers, who would later go on to direct The Mummy and The Mummy Returns, so he's great at these adventure films. Beyond that, given the source material and the cast, including Jason Scott Lee, Lena Headey, Cary Elwes, and Sam Neill, I'm surprised this movie isn't talked about a little bit more. Now, the film does feel a little bit like they're trying to infuse a little bit of Tarzan into the mix, a little bit of Aladdin. The animals can take a back seat in the middle act, and they give us a villain that you really hate. It's a lot of fun to see Cary Elwes kind of play the opposite of his character from The Princess Bride, where you just hate this guy, and the last 30 minutes of this film is all payoff for all the horrible things that these jerks did in the first hour and a half of the film. So this is a nice little lost gem that I think more people should check out. In 5th place is Pete's Dragon, a really sweet story about a boy and his dragon that leans into that relationship and the beauty and the majesty of this creature. It almost feels like a movie from a different time because it lacks any real sense of cynicism or any mean streak inside of it. It manages to have conflict inside of it. There's tension, there's stakes, but you don't have an all-out villain. You just have someone that sees a dragon as both a threat and his opportunity to be famous. But because it's such a good-natured film, even as you move into the conclusion, it focuses in on the fact that people and the dragon are doing the right thing rather than feeling the need to humiliate or kill the antagonist in the story. So it leads to kind of just very satisfying, feel-good ending. Number 4, Mulan. This film is both an adaptation of the Disney animated film as well as a return to the Chinese folklore source material that led to the Disney animated film. And for that reason, they made quite a few changes to the story itself, leading to very different reactions from different audiences. For me, I have seen the original Mulan a number of times throughout the years, but I didn't grow up watching it. It's not a film that I have deep connections to, so I primarily just watched this film as Disney's take on telling a Chinese period piece, war epic type film, and on those terms, I enjoyed the film well enough. I thought it was shot well, there was a compelling arc inside of it, and some very cool, big, epic action sequences for me to enjoy. Now, I don't think they did themselves any favors by making some changes where they made her kind of the chosen one. I don't think that that's a great addition to the story, but it also didn't really hurt my experience watching the film either, so I actually like this movie. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, be sure to share your ranking down below in the comments section. My list is not the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours, and I know you can be very passionate on these films, so let's keep it respectful. Also remember, after this video, I've done a number of other rankings of Disney eras before. You can check those out right up here. In 3rd place is The Jungle Book 2016, a technical masterpiece that put truly astonishing things on film that to this day I cannot believe that we've reached the point in time where computers can generate worlds and animals that look this real. But the thing that makes all the difference between The Lion King and The Jungle Book is that at the center of this film is an actual human performance anchoring the film to reality and enabling emotion to appear on screen. The other thing that works really nicely about this film is that it's a straightforward story, and they use that to their advantage to just set up all these great set pieces. It's a solid adventure where you care about Mowgli and his journey and his relationship to all these animals. And so while it is a film known for what it was able to do with visual effects and CGI, the story itself is captivating. Our runner-up is Cinderella, an elegant take on the animated classic directed by Kenneth Branagh, who is perfect for telling these types of stories. He knows how to work with a big studio, but kind of telling these period piece films, working with the production design, that's where he can really shine, and you see that on display here. The original story lent itself well to kind of have this underdog romance story with elements of fantasy inside of that, and Branagh is able to elevate all that material. There's just enough addition to the backstory, small little details, to where you feel just the position that Cinderella is in and the way she's being mistreated, and you just hate that stepmother and those stepsisters so much as you go throughout this story, and it keeps finding all the right ways to kind of poke you just a little bit more to make you despise them, but never going over the edge into cruelty or depriving the story of its sweetness, and without having the right amount of payoff, and a payoff that doesn't kind of turn cruel in its own way. And because of that, it just balances all these different tones together and makes for a great little adaptation of the story. But coming in at number 1 is actually Aladdin. This is a movie I didn't want them to remake. I didn't think Guy Ritchie was the right guy to do it. I didn't think the trailers looked very good. And the one thing that kind of gave me hope was I thought Will Smith was the perfect person to take the place of Robin Williams in a live action remake. Then I went to go see the film and I thought it was pretty good. And then I rewatched it and I liked it a little bit more. And then it's become a movie that's rewatched in the Chandler household constantly, and it is just an absolute blast. I think some of that is just the source material itself lent itself really well to being live action because you have Aladdin running through these towns doing parkour type stuff. You have dance numbers, you have chases, big action sequences, very cinematic live action type things. Beyond that, as I mentioned before, Will Smith, of course, is great as the genie. He's so fun, charismatic, funny, but in a way that's totally different from Robin Williams. And in no way do you feel like you have to compare the two because they do something so different with the role. And when you put all the pieces together, they found a way to kind of make their own little mark, do something just different enough, but it's still being truly faithful to the original animated classic. And it's just an absolute blast. So it comes in at number 1. If you've enjoyed this video, you can find more of my Disney rankings right over there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.